Hi, I'm Maxine Penny and my pronouns are she, her. I'm a DJ and co-founder of the Goddess of Queens. I have a background in culture management and I'm passionate about bringing people together. I'm like a matchmaker and I love talking to people from all walks of life. And in this episode, I'm so excited to bring two extremely wonderful people together who have an amazing story to tell. We have Joy Gregory, all the way from Johannesburg. Joy is an award-winning artist specializing in photography who is known for her work concerning issues of identity politics and culture. A graduate of Manchester Polytechnic and the Royal College of Art, she has worked and exhibited widely both in the UK and internationally, participating in numerous biennales and festivals. Her work is featured in both private and public, including the Victoria and Albert Museum, UK Government Art Collection, Institute of Modern Art Brisbane, Australia, and Yale University, New Haven. She is the editor of Shining Lights, Black Women Photographers in the 1980s-90s Britain, an anthology of Black British women's photography published by Mac Autograph, which is available now. You heard it here. We love to shine a light and share unheard voices, as does Joy. Her book features 57 photographers, including work from Maxine Walter, Mona Hatoum, and Turner Prize nominee Ingrid Pollard. I'm sure we'll talk about this much more later. Because when I saw your article in CNN about shining a light on overlooked Black women of colour, it really spoke to me. And I'm so grateful that I worked in the arts in London at the South Bank Centre many moons ago. And when I had a recent call with my girlfriends that are all now curators and artists in their own right, that we were able to be connected and introduced and have you on the show today. So thanks for being here.
Massive round of applause.
And who is that applauding? It is DJ Paulette. DJ Paulette, a Manchester legend and house DJ.
Do you know what I just say? You've got my second name. I'm Paulette Maxine.
We are connected. I knew it.
We are connected.
Also,
yes.
I noticed that you are a Manchester legend and Joy went to Manchester Polytechnic.
Yes. Joy and I went to the same... Well, I went to Manchester Poly. I started at the Poly and in 92 it was made a university. So I graduated from the Met, Manchester Metropolitan University, but we went to the same place.
Wow. I never knew that. I had a vision this morning that I love to matchmake people and bring people together.
Yeah.
So I just love the fact that you have a lot to catch up on.
Yeah, you know, they do say 6 degrees of separation. Here you go. It's less than 6 degrees because it's 1 degree for us both having the same second name. And it's 1 degree for myself and Joy going to the same educational establishment. Who knew?
Who knew? You know, what's also really interesting is that you're both authors as well. You've got your book out, Welcome to the Club, where you share your insights of the highs and lows of your music career. I would love to talk to you about this later.
Yeah. Happy to blab about that thing. I'm so proud of it, though.
I've got loads of questions. You should be proud of it.
Yeah, I really am.
All of us have the same thing in common, that we want justice, we want to keep the beat going, we want to have women and unheard voices. So we're speaking to lots of legends, and I'm sure we'll cover many, many topics today. However, today, maybe selfishly, I want to ask you and speak to you about keeping the faith in creativity, because as you both probably know, that when you're creative, how do you know that you're on the right path? What are you doing? What am I doing? I'd love to know more about the art and music scene retrospectively, and let's have a fun question to start off with. I know what mine is, but what song gets you out of bed in the morning? There's so many, right? I mean, mine really depends on my emotions and the energy I need to start the day with. So it can either be loud or it can be soft or it can be emotional. Actually, this morning I put on Get Up, Stand Up by Bob Marley and it made me cry. I don't know about you, but music makes me cry sometimes. I felt this overwhelming power and was dancing around before getting prepared for our conversation. Joy, I know that you said you know nothing about music, but that you think it's like that you know nothing about your mother, that you know nothing about the sun shining, because music is so much part of your life that you actually forget that it's there. And I think that's so beautiful. I remember you also said you can't do exercise without music. And if you ever go to the gym and there's no music, you have to go home. I just love how important music is in your daily life. And I'm going to share with everyone that you were listening to Do You Mind, Kyla by Crazy Cousins, because I love that because it's an old school London garage tune, which brings back memories for sure.
It's a good one. I mean, it's a really good one. But for me, it can be absolutely anything from either rock or soul or funk or disco or rare groove. I mean, like at the moment, there's Little Sim's Mood Swings is just absolutely firing for me. That will always get a rise out of me because I just love the track anyway. I think it's very, very clever and it's her doing something different. And it's just the beat and the way the track builds. And it just gives me that kind of energy for the first thing in the morning. But then it could also be Stevie Wonder's Do I Do, which always makes me dance. You know, it does not fail for me. That track does not fail. Or Sylvester's You Make Me Feel Mighty Real will work any time of the day or night for me. Anytime.
You can start a morning playlist. I also see you got Frankie Knuckles' poster in the background. I mean, when I was preparing for this, I started to listen to music, and that track's Frankie Knuckles Presents album really formed my love of house music, especially when I lived in London. I mean, a long time ago, it got me through some dark days, and it's just so emotional.
And Frankie was such a great producer anyway. I mean, it's like a proper musician, and his use of keys and like, he really got the melodies and the emotions and the arrangements just perfect. He was like, and he was such a lovely guy anyway. So, yeah. Anything by Frankie Knuckles works for me.
Joy, I know that anything by Tony Braxton gets you going. I remember you telling me that you used to live in Saudi Arabia a long time ago when you were putting together the foundation course. And because of the way it was back then, not like it is now in Jeddah, that you could only walk around in the compound. And so that's where you did your exercise on the track. So I can just imagine you late night, because it gets really hot out there, right? Listening to the, what was it, the Divas or the Hot Divas soundtrack. I don't think you called it a podcast back then. I can just imagine that this was the soundtrack to your life at that time. I'd actually like to know a bit more about you both. Where are you based, and what do you think about resilience and keeping the faith and creativity? Joy, I also know that you studied an MA photography at the Royal College of Art in London, and you really wanted to go there and just have 2 years of studying and do what you really wanted to do, which was be yourself. And you never really thought about being the first Black woman there. And this really stuck with me, that a friend of yours now said that they actually came to look at you because they'd never seen anyone like you there. Like you were in a zoo. They really wanted to know who you were, and that you were interviewed by the institution. And they also asked you, if you didn't get a grant, would you still like to join? And you said, no, of course not. I mean, I know nowadays people are very grateful to get in, but this was really a penultimate time for you, for your photography, being able to experience with the medium and experiment. And that it was so important that you had the freedom to do what you did when you were at Manchester, and you had the opportunity to build on that. I would also like to add that this is why it stands out so much to me that this was only 40 years ago that you, Joy, were the first Black woman to go to the Royal College of Arts for photography. And this is why these conversations are so important, because you went there for art, not to make a statement.
I'm kind of thinking about the education thing, and I had a slightly different experience to Joy. I studied English at Manchester Met, and it was the Polytechnic when I started there. And I went into my degree as a mature student. I was only 24, but I was classed as a mature student because I wasn't 18, just going straight after my A-levels. And I'd worked for 6 years and got various experiences. And when I decided to go back, because I really wanted to do this degree, I really wanted to do the literature degree. And I went to see all the universities that I should have applied for on my UCA form when I when I left college after my A-levels, and I got turned down by every single one of them. And I had really good results, you know. I've got, 10 O-levels, 4 A-levels, really good results. But I got turned down from every single one of them, including Manchester University and including Manchester Poly. So in order to get my place on the course, I had to go literally and camp out at the dean, the head of the English course. And I went there every day for a week and sat there till he would see me. And I mean, this is in 1991. So, you know, we didn't have emails or mobile phones or anything like that. You know, we barely had an answer phone. I don't even think we had answer phones necessarily then. So, you know, I really did make a point of making a pain of myself. And this is a lesson I got off my mum, you know, just be a pain until they do that. So I was married. I just got married in 1991. And when I finally got this meeting with the head of the course, we sat down and we talked about it, and he looked at my results and everything. And I'd been a copywriter for 2 years. So I'd been writing, and I'd been writing for magazines and working in journalism and radio and all of that. So, you know, on paper even, I had the goods to do the course. And when he eventually gave me my place, he looked at me and he said, right, I want you now to sign in blood that you are never going to miss a day of this course. You're not going to get pregnant. And you're not going to, just because I was a woman and, you know, also a black woman on this course, I had to make a certain deal to say that I was going to, you know, respect every day of this course. And it really put me in a bind because I said, you know, yeah, for sure, I really want to do this course, so I'm going to do that. And I didn't realize at the time how sexist, racist, misogynistic that actually was to ask somebody to make that kind of a deal for their place. You know, when other people had been getting their places like, you know, unconditional offers. And when I finally took up the place and I started the course, I was the only black person on my course that year. That has always made me think, how many hoops do black people have to jump through to get their place, to get a place that anybody else can just stroll into? And I was better qualified than most people on that course to do that course. And fast forward to 2024, I can guarantee you nobody else on that course has written a book.
I mean, 100%. We do have to jump through hoops. Like you said, there is a high expectation and high judgment placed on women. And then especially black women. I mean, I was the only black girl in my school. And, you know, I was always feeling a bit left out. Othered, yeah, completely othered. And it wasn't until after George Floyd that I realized that all these microaggressions since my childhood were actually because, not that I was just Maxine, it was because I was a black woman and it never hit me. And I was like, I just want to do it. I want to be me. I want to be creative. Let's go. And that's why this conversation is so good, because it's detrimental to people that if you don't get the support around you, you might not do it.
That resilience for black women starts the day you go to school. It doesn't start as an older woman. It starts the day you leave the house to socialize with other children and other, you know, when you go to school.
It's true. I used to say I never experienced racism, which is funny because I ignored it. And as a child, when someone said something to me, I would be like, that's not true. But you internalize it.
Because you didn't have a term for it. You didn't know what it was.
That's right.
It is really interesting, the question of resilience, because I think it is something that is almost programmed into Black people's DNA.
True.
And people of colour's DNA.
Yeah.
We have to be that thing. We don't have a choice about that.
That is very interesting. We don't have a choice. I mean, I'm often like, why am I trying to do everything 150% at all times? And even today, I was like, oh my God, everything has to be perfect. And I really have these affirmations and mantras, like, even if it doesn't work out, it's okay. But it's exhausting.
And it is exhausting, but we don't have a choice. We have to perform at, and I know it doesn't exist, but 150, 200%. We have to perform 10 times harder than our white counterparts to get half as much.
True. I mean, I've been in work situations where I look at people and I think, how have they not got reprimanded for this? And
I even got a job.
Yes. True. I was trying to be tactful, but yes.
No, it's like, how are they even still in a job?
Actually, it's true. And I'm being reprimanded for being 2 minutes late, or I didn't deliver something.
They see you being late.
Yeah.
They don't see the others being late.
And I always thought it was because I had a big personality. And actually, in retrospect, it's not.
I don't know about you, but when people say, oh, you know, you're so resilient and you're so strong, you know, we as women are so resilient and we are so strong. And how does that feel to you when it's like, this is just a natural state of being? I don't even think I'm being any particular way about myself. This is just how and who I've been kind of programmed or taught or this is just the way I've become because of whatever the external mitigating forces are.
Joy, did you want to share something as well?
Yeah, no, when you were talking about that internalization of racism and how you sort of like brush things away, because I was also brought up in a town where there were very few Black people or very few people who looked like me. And so the thing was, you could never do anything without everybody sort of like knowing it was you. So there's no hiding under cover. And I suppose the other thing was that, you know, because I so wanted to fit in and so wanted to just be like normal and almost want to disappear sometimes and just like not be special. That thing about, you know, everybody wants to be special. It's like, I didn't want to be special. I want to be like everyone else. I mean, like I'm special already. I don't want anything else. And so I would do things to actually downplay any difference or any talent sometimes that I had. I was, you know, being in a race, and my parents, they never used to take time off work, but they came to the school sports day, and I couldn't have been any more than 7. Maybe I was 6, maybe I was 5. And like, so I remember the prizes. I mean, here I am, like, you know, 60 odd years later, remembering that, like, you know, the first prize was an orange, gold, second prize was an apple, silver, and the third prize was a banana, you know, bronze. And so I deliberately ran slower so I wouldn't be the person that was the star of the thing. And so I could win the banana. And people said, why did you do that? And I was like, oh, because I like bananas. Absolute lie. It was so I didn't actually have to be the person standing on the platform. I didn't disgrace myself totally. But I mean, like, you think as a primary age school child, being able to actually recognize that, you know, you were different because of the colour of your skin. It's actually quite heartbreaking.
It was most definitely a key experience for both myself and my twin, and I know it was the same. I've got 6 sisters and 1 brother, and through primary school, when my sister Elizabeth left, because we all went to different primary schools, we moved around a little bit, but when my sister Elizabeth left our primary school, both myself and Paula were the only children of colour, the only Black children in that school, and there were like 850 students. And then when we went to secondary school, it was the same again, both myself and Paula, out of 1,000 students. And there was like, at one point, you know, you get influx and out. At one point, there was another girl a year above us, and then a year later, there were another 2 black girls in our year who left the year after. So they left the year after, the people would come in and they would leave. They didn't actually stand and go the whole way through the 5 years in that school. They came and went because it was just like, yo, where's the others? So this is in Manchester. Yeah, this is in Manchester through the 70s and 80s. So, I went to really good schools though. So, the benefits were the education that I got was exceptional in everything, in music, arts, sports, everything. We were, we were just taught, educated really super, super well. But in saying that, my mum is just such that, and the way that she was brought up, we had to excel. And when you are the only one in the class, you have to excel. You can't, there's no, it's just, I don't know. I don't know whether it's just the way my mum was taught, but there was no B.
I don't think it was just your mum. I think, like you said earlier, it is ingrained in us to always be at 150%. Because if you're not overachieving and standing out, or maybe even underachieving, you're also standing out. So there's no happy middle ground. But there's something in us. My mum always said the same thing, actually. People are already going to notice you, so do your best. And that pressure is so intense sometimes, I don't even know that I'm doing it. Like you said, the thick skin that you have to wear to school, starts at school.
Like you don't even, because you don't have a word for it. And you don't know why you're having to either disappear or be visible, or why you're having to put all this extra effort into just being, however that is comfortable to be in that space. Why do I have to? And then I think it might have been around 8 or 9 when the idea of difference starts to really kick in, and you understand that it's the colour of your skin that is actually setting you apart. Up until that point, it's just people being awkward or antagonistic or just not wanting to be your friend. You don't understand that the reason that they don't want to be your friend is that you are different. Like when you're little, it's just they don't want to be my friend. But when you get to, I'm only speaking from personal experience, but I think I was maybe 8 or 9 when I realised that they didn't want to be my friend because I was black and because we were the only black kids in the school. And that's, if I hadn't have had a twin, I wouldn't have had a friend going through school.
I remember sort of like, that whole thing about disappearing, but it's also trying to be friends with everyone so that I didn't have any enemies in the school. So I had older brothers, but they were quite a lot older than me. So they're like 6 years older. So they'd already gone through primary school. They were in secondary school. And I had younger siblings who had a whole other set of friends. And I know that my brother, who's a year younger than me, really struggled at school because, he didn't want to have to make, to be different in any other way. He just wanted to be himself. And, he was always in trouble and my mum was always at the school. And so, he wanted to make his mark, whereas I just wanted to be like, so I tried to be friends with almost everyone. And especially, not so much the bullies, but the girls that seem to be in charge or seem to have more power. So I seemed to gravitate towards the people who had more power because I thought, well, at least if I'm on the right side of them, no one's going to sort of like kick my head in or something.
Yeah.
I'm a recovering people pleaser, and everything you're saying is so interesting because if I know that someone might sort of not connect with my energy, I will I will make sure I go up and, let them get to know me and, be overly nice. I mean, this is when I was younger. And now as an adult, I've also taken my power back and think, I don't have to smile all the time, and I don't have to be the perceived angry black woman. And if you think I have that face, that's not my problem.
Yeah, that's their problem.
And Paulette, you went through a really hard time getting into your university courses. And Joy, with also your experience in education, this is also being or feeling rejected by society or the system around you. And again, how do you stay resilient in those times?
For me, going to so I tried to go into photography through work. I didn't realise that education was an option for me. I didn't see that I was like super clever. I didn't have I suppose I did have fairly good grades coming out of school, but I didn't understand the system. My parents didn't understand the system, and so therefore I thought it really wasn't an option. So I tried to go the work route. So I applied for 1,000,001 jobs. And I think this is really way back in the day. This is in the 70s. And the adverts I'd apply for or I'd look through, they'd have things like, no suntans need apply. And I'd be sat there thinking,
what?
You have a look at the Evening Standard from 1976 through, and you look at the adverts. There's no suntans need apply, and if you read it literally, because the laws were there, you'd think of people who'd recently been on holiday, but you knew they meant anybody of colour.
Exactly, because they weren't allowed to use no blacks, no whatever. It was just at the start of that anti-discrimination laws being in. So to get round it, the jolly nice language, it's shocking.
Maxine's in.
If you could see everyone's faces right now. Yeah. I mean, that's why I wanted to talk to you both, because you have forged a way for me. And I mean, I'm 43 and my mouth is wide open, gobsmacked. And I know these things were there, but the blatantness of it.
Yeah, but it's like reading between the lines. Yeah. So you know the code, and so you know what it actually means. And then, so the other thing about it was, so when I actually did apply for a job at Condé Nast, and they actually offered me the job, and I was so happy. I was 45 foot tall. I was and just to go and work in the darkroom as the sub darkroom assistant. And by the time I got back to my friend's house in Ealing, when I was full of joy and everything, I was telling her I got this new job and I'm going to be starting on Monday, blah, blah, blah. They'd actually rung the house and had to withdraw the offer because the guys in the darkroom were absolutely appalled that they'd
appointed a woman.
Appointed a woman, because it meant they had to take their naked lady pictures off the wall. So it wasn't even about race then, it was about being a woman. And so I thought, well, the only way I'm going to be able to get into photography is actually to go to college. And I didn't really understand how to do that. So I was asking everybody in their I worked in factories, I worked everywhere to save up money to go to college. And so I ended up going to High Wycombe, and I was late because I didn't know that's what you had to do, was to go to, to art school in High Wycombe and do a foundation course. And once I'd managed to crack that particular code, and I was still doing my whole people-pleasing thing, of course, and I applied to Manchester as my first choice, because I just thought, hey, I also wanted to get far away from home and be in a city, not be in a town. And it was great. And I got there and I was I was doing what I really wanted to do. But there were many, many hoops to jump through, and just being able to understand the system, because nobody tells you. No, in fact, I think one of the people who was one of my greatest friends when I was at foundation was somebody who I'd never ever spoken to before, who lived in the same town as me, but actually had gone to private school. And I don't know if you probably won't remember, but during that time in the 70s, there was a big crash. And so lots of these kids who were at the private school ended up going to the local grammar school. So she was at the high school, and I used to see her, at the high school. I wasn't at the high school. But she really supported me and helped me to understand the code when I was in these places where, to be honest, you go to, Buckinghamshire, South Bucks, very well heeled kids going to school there. and sort of like she helped me negotiate my way through and how to apply to Manchester and everything. So, you have to have allies who are actually in that other camp as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's interesting. I've heard you've used a word quite often, code, and what we now call code switching, which Black people do all the time in order to be in certain environments. So if you're in school, it's like you say, you're fitting in, but there's a code switch. You change your language, you change your hair, you change your, just your general demeanor. You're not loud anymore. You kind of dial it down. You dial your voice down. You dial your humor down. You dial everything down so that you can not be Black, but be a little less different than everybody else. And then when you go into the workplace, maybe, if you're in a dark room, you be a bit less female. If you go into working in, it's like Gina Yashari talks about being an electrician, you'd be a little less feminine in that environment, and you'd be a little less Black in that environment where you're being called an eggnog and people are having page 3 pictures stuck on your locker door. So it's really interesting how we as a people, as a race, it's just just as employees, as pupils, all the way into employees, have to code switch to get a job, to get the place on the course, to figure out what that code is, to enable us to open the door and get in that place. And it's just the most bizarre thing. I just think people don't know, or that they should understand, that there is a certain amount of work that we have to do that other people don't even have to think about. You don't have to think about what no suntans means on your job application. They don't have to think about what what your hairstyle says about you, what your hair quality says about you before you've opened your mouth. It's just the maddest thing.
I was going to say it's madness. I had a job in London where the CEO had come in from somewhere else, and he had said to me, you need to look more professional. You should dress for the job you want and not the job you have.
Yeah.
And I wore a suit every day. I invested in a suit because I was working in corporate London. And when I looked around, other people were in jeans and T-shirts. And I thought, what does he mean? And that really struck a chord with me. And then the comments about my hair, like, it looks so much more professional when it's tied back
And down and tamed.
There was a law that you weren't allowed to wear your natural hair in school until recently.
Yeah. Code switching.
Code switching, and I've done it. Actually, when you were saying, Joy, I grew up in the Royal Borough, Berkshire, next to Windsor, and I always used to use that as a way to get in, fit in. I'm from Windsor, I went to a good school, but also the accessibility that you were talking about, Joy, in education. I don't think my parents actually knew, looking back now, how to apply for universities. And I certainly didn't know and wasn't supported. So I also became, what did you say, Paulette? I also went back to university as an adult.
Mature student.
A mature student, that's it. When you're in your 20s, maybe don't feel mature. I mean, if you hear mature student, it's like a 65-year-old that's gone back to study philosophy. I mean, I went back to study fashion styling and fashion journalism at St. Martin's, and being in a room socioeconomically, working 2 jobs to put myself through that course and feeling again othered, and getting told that it's not good enough, my work's not good enough, and looking at other people's work and feeling like, well, sorry, I think my work's really good and creative. Yeah.
I was 23 when I started, so I was a mature student. Isn't that the most bonkers thing because we were kids. We were kids. Like, if you think of 21, 22 now, you don't think mature, old. What does that mean? Why was that even a qualification? But because I was married and I hadn't gone straight after my A-levels, because you'd worked as well and then gone back into education, it kind of changes your status. But it doesn't just change your status in terms of your application, it changes your status in standing in that class, because they qualify you as the mature student. Like, madness. So, in a way, I felt like it was just this mad paradox because I was only 23, 24. I was married, but I had a young, studying head on me. You know, I will always have a young head on me because I'm curious. It doesn't matter how old I get. I am curious. I will be curious till the day I die. And I think that curiosity keeps you young. But it was that feeling old amongst my peers. It was that feeling like nobody wanted to pick me to pair up because I was like this boring, fuddy-duddy, old, mature student who actually wanted to do the course. Aside from the 18-year-olds who'd gone there because their parents had told them to do it for 3 years and then, you know, whatever happened. I actually wanted to do the course. I wanted to study. I wanted to read. I wanted to expand my mind. I wanted to have ideas and opinions. And I was different because I was older. That meant I wanted to be there.
I always thought I'd missed out because I didn't go straight from school to university.
You didn't miss anything.
That's what everyone tells me. And now I think I made a really good decision to go back. And like you said, go back and do something I really wanted to do. And even though it didn't work out in the way I expected, you know, because like you said, maybe it's curiosity or the love of learning that feeds you in life. But I also think it's resilience. Like, we had to be adults. I had to be an adult straight away. So you just get on with it. You work, you survive, and hopefully thrive. And I had all these holistic spiritual questions. But actually, what does it mean to be successful? Because we've had to go through all these layers and obviously still going. And both of you have an amazing career right now.
This is a question because I had this conversation with my twin yesterday.
Did you?
Exactly yesterday. So...
But I think it's a strange thing, success. How do you measure it? And what is it anyway? And so I don't feel any different now to what I did last year or 10 years ago, because I think, and it's also something I talk about with my students about this whole thing around success. So I started teaching in 1986, 1987. And I had a fantastic mentor around my teaching. So the first students I was teaching, they always wanted to know how to improve their practice, how to improve what they're doing in terms of the material they were working with, their ideas and things like that. It got to, like, I suppose the 90s, towards the mid-end of towards the end of the 90s, and then early 2000s, then students would come up to you and say, how do I become famous? Because the idea about success had completely shifted with the whole thing around fame. Where did that come from? That has nothing to do with, you know, what is successful. Because what, for me, around being successful is actually being able to follow your own path. And that, and it's not about money and it's not about fame. It's not about anything than being very centered within yourself. So, you know, maybe I'm successful because I feel centered in myself almost. But like, the idea of fame is that, how do you measure that? I mean, is it sort of like you can't actually go to the airport on your own anymore? Or you can't go into Lidl's.
You can always go into Lidl.
Say hello to my little friends. Yeah,
baseball cap and a hoodie. That's all you need.
Exactly.
That's Beyonce.
We're going to have a little crew. We're going to be hanging out over there. I love it.
You can go to any supermarket in the world. Baseball bat, baseball cap.
Here we are in Johannesburg.
Here we are.
Yeah. Too famous, get away from me. But I mean, it is true. People get so caught up in social media strategies, the 15 minutes of fame, like you said, Joy. I mean, people should stick to the passion in front of you. If you do something you love, again, what's that process? What's that creative resilience that you have to stick to, to what you believe in and have faith?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I had this conversation with my twin, Paula, yesterday about success and what that meant. And she was just like, because my mum's ill at the moment and she's been quite ill since September. So we as a family are just, really trying to make her as happy and as comfortable as she can possibly be and show her that she's had this life, which has produced these people who've then produced these people and what that success can look like. Because, my mum used to be a singer and she didn't actually get to follow that path to its ultimate because she had a big family. So we try and show that that family is the success, that that very personal, tangible creation of a world within a world that then goes on to create another part of the world. You're changing and bringing these people into the world and along is its own success, and my twin was just like, she's changed her job recently and she was really questioning what her success was. And I'm like, but Hannah, her daughter, has just gone through university. She's put her daughter through university 4 years, and 2 of those being during the pandemic. And her daughter's coming away with a first with honours and has just got the most fantastic results. And I'm like, this is success. I haven't got a daughter. I haven't done that. I have done other things, but success is different things to different people. You can't see, like, whatever the fame is for Beyonce, multi-billion-dollar tour, changing economies, Taylor Swift changing economies at the drop of a hat or the change of a costume, that it maybe is success to them. But I can guarantee actually Beyonce's success was having Blue Ivy on the stage next to her and handing the baton to the next generation in front of lots of people. But the next generation, it's what we do. It's how we, what our legacy is. To me, legacy is success. So how we inspire, how we can inspire and influence, the next generation. I haven't got children, but in my own way, whether through mentoring or teaching or just answering people's emails in my DMs, I am trying to, in any way, shape or form, make it easier or change things so that other people have a different experience of coming through, following this path as I have an easier chance of following this path. So for me, that's the success, is being able to pass the baton on to other people and give them some kind of help, guidance, easier path. That to me is a success. And having somebody who has read the book and come and say, that really touched me, that made a difference to me, or even saying, no, I challenge that bit. That is a success to me, because it's making people think, it's making people change and evolve, or it's helping people. To me, like, the lives you touch, that for me is more a barometer of success than the money that you make. But,
Absolutely.
does that mean I'm going to be poor for the rest of my life? Well, I don't know. Maybe, but you can't have everything, can you?
Created a book. We can.
But yeah, I get to speech about it. But I just get a little bit frustrated because, like you say, people confuse success and fame, and they are really not the same thing. I think it can be a success if you have mental health problems. Being a success can be getting out of bed in the morning. It's different for everybody. And we know ourselves what an achievement can feel like. And, because I do, I have had mental health issues, and I know those mornings when I've not wanted to get up and when I've not wanted to work and when I've been able to do it, it's just like, yeah, that day was a win. So that is what I would encourage people to think of success in those terms. It's a very personal thing. I think success is a very personal thing, and it's different for everybody.
I completely agree. Absolutely.
Yeah. Props.
Well,
I mean, it's everything you say is true, which is why I wanted to ask the question. And it's such a good answer because you were really open to me reaching out to you, and that made a huge difference in my life. And then I can also make the difference in someone else's life sharing this conversation. And I think as a creative, as an artist, you want to have that legacy where you share knowledge with people, because the people around you are important. And we might not be able to change the complete structure at the top, but we can change who we have around us.
And it's those little incremental changes that actually do make the big change.
Yeah.
Because it's not always about we are the world and feed the world and flipping Live Aid.
Yeah.
It's sometimes these conversations that then inspire our communities to go out into other communities to have these conversations. Because I think one of the most important things to me as a Black person is starting talking. Because I have spent so much time not saying and not reaching out and not engaging with my community, whether that's been the dance music community or the Black community, Black female community, queer community, whatever, all of these things that I felt like I couldn't get involved with. And now it's like, it is massively important, more important than ever for these conversations to happen.
Yeah.
And that is the success in itself, is making it possible to have these conversations and for showing people that these conversations can be had between ourselves, and that changes the world.
That's why I started this podcast. I wanted to hear things that I needed to hear. I wanted to have conversations where I feel like people need to listen to this. And I'm forever grateful that you're here. And Joy is here as well. And you both, in your books, I mean, what inspired you to write your books? Joy, you said you weren't successful, but you've got this amazing book of women.
I mean, how amazing is that?
Yeah.
That you have shone a light on all of these people. Just incredible.
I mean, I think the thing with the book was it wasn't actually something I'd planned and thought about. I was like, over 500 years, I'm going to do this book. 40 years ago, in fact, more than 40 years ago, I was going to do a book similar to this, in fact, with probably some of the same people, with this fantastic woman, also I met in Manchester, called Araba Mercer. And she was working at Sheba Publishers. Sheba's a women's publishers. And she said, well, why don't we do this book on women's photography, Black women's photography? And I said, yeah, that'd be really great. And so we collected all the stuff in, and it's back in the day when, to have one photographic plate cost an absolute fortune. And she was like a small publishing thing. And it just wouldn't fly. We couldn't have just one photograph and loads of text about that medium. And whose work do you put in the book? and I'm faced with this dilemma again. So roll forward like another 30 odd years. And, I got invited to do a talk on Maxine Walker's exhibition at Autograph. And I thought, well, what I'll do, because I've known Maxine was the person who got me my first job when I came down to London, finished at the Royal College, and I was working as a lab technician in a school for physics and chemistry. I've still got a scar on my finger. And so she got me this job in North Paddington Community Darkroom, and I've sort of I've held her in my heart ever since. The person who holds your hand and actually gets you through, and another person who explains to you the code. So now you're in this other environment, and so I met lots of other women. But talking about Maxine's work, I thought, what I'll do is I'll frame it in, amongst the work of the other people that were practicing at that time. So the other black women making the work at the time. There was nothing in the library. I have access to London College of Communication because I teach at the University of the Arts. And it's the best photography library probably in the country. Did they have one book, one article in a magazine going back to that period, going back to the 80s on any of those women? No, there was nothing. And so I ended up going to there's at Chelsea, they've got sort of like an archive, and at Goldsmiths, they've got an archive of different artists' work. And there was some at Goldsmiths in the Women's Artist Slide Library, which Rita Keegan actually set up this thing called the Women of Colour Slide Library, which was a talking group as well. So I went there and I sort of picked some people out, and then just thought, this is terrible, that all there is that remains of these many women's work is ephemera. There's nothing. It's sort of like a few photocopied leaflets, a couple of flyers, some slides, none of which you can take home. And I just thought, this is wrong. This is like a big part of British photography history that's completely erased. And so after I did the talk, and because obviously there was nothing it was very difficult to do like a proper presentation with slides and things. So Maxine joined me on the stage, and we just ended up reminiscing. And there were some people in the audience who also were there at the same time, who were part of the scene, not necessarily not of colour or anything, just like people that were there at that time. And it's sort of like, well, what happened to the work? And so that was the beginning of the book, and it wasn't about, I'm going to write a fantastic book. It was like, I think that this part of history needs to be back in the centre, and we need to talk about those people, not because they were, the best, not because that they were the most famous, and that there are, you look at that work and you just think, wow, why wasn't this stuff published at that time? But also it was about our stories, about the stories of women of colour, of people of colour in those communities that was documented by those people being absolutely absent from British history, and not sort of like photographed as like either victims or, objects, or sort of like, isn't this interesting looking at this culture? It's like, yeah, we're interesting as individuals, as people within our own communities and living outside those communities as well, with our code switching, with the whole gamut of everything. And the book actually is a complete joy. And the other person who worked with me on the book, Kaz Damani, she's an academic, and she brought a really different flavour to it as well, sort of like, so she was really interesting because she was from France. So we employed her as a researcher, and loads of people applied for the job. I thought nobody would apply. I thought we'd get 3 people apply. But of course, everybody, I think we had nearly 100 people apply for this, not very well paid research job. Yeah. But she had been looking at this magazine called Polarise, which came out in 1987, for her undergraduate degree, for her MA degree, and then for her PhD. And so she was clearly, she'd been reading around the subject and been speaking to some of the people. So she was a really good person to actually bring on board with this. So, it was, I think it's a really interesting book. And I think one of the things for me that made it, but actually makes the book very special, is the writing. So I've written quite a lot of the introductory things, because one of my rules about writing is you can't speak down to anyone. but it has to be readable and it has to be enjoyable. And so, working with their copywriter,
absolutely agree.
It's sort of like, so it's an absolute, because I want people to read it. I don't want people to pick it up and think, oh my God, another turgid academic text. So that's, and I think it's very, very special. And what for me was really special was when we did the launch of the book, was like quite a lot of the women in the book came, and they came from all over the country, and some from overseas, to be at the launch. And they hadn't seen some of each other. Some people hadn't seen each other for like nearly 30 years or more. But it was like a real party atmosphere, and everybody's really happy with the book, because it's like putting all their work, not all their work, but putting their work and their presence on the map. And that for me was the reason for doing the book.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah. It's funny hearing the resonances all over the place. First of all, about the writing, it has to be interesting and engaging and entertaining for everybody. You don't want to write a turgid book. You want to write a book that gets a certain amount of information over, certainly, but handles that information in the same way as it handles the color of the book, like the details of the book, in that it is uplifting and engaging and encouraging and enthusiastic. You can sense the joy of the job through it. You can sense the reason, the why of everybody in doing this thing, in getting involved with this thing. Also, the resonance for me was in getting those stories out there that were, not necessarily the big story, but were their stories. And they are all brilliant people in their own right. For whatever they have done, at whatever level they have done it, they have contributed in such a way that it should be recognized, that their contribution should be recognized. And also not just recognize that their contribution should not be lost, that their contribution should not be erased. And what happens with any history, any archiving of the histories of people of colour in any sort of discipline, is that it can be there. It's in the press, it's in a book, it's in wherever, but it's never kind of brought together in one place, in one sort of repository, which cannot be changed. So if it's in lots of different magazines and flyers and posters and this, it can be lost if it's not all brought together in that one book that keeps it there solidly, that when they digitize that book, those things are not going to be lost. We don't have to then start scrabbling about for all of these flyers that have, all of these posters, flyers, design work, photos, exhibitions or whatever that have been broken up, lost, water damaged or whatever. You can lose people's histories and people's archive stuff really, really easily. So, similarly for my book, it's like I'm writing about a lot of people that also don't necessarily get written about. So they haven't had the coverage in the magazines. They haven't had the benefit of getting even a single line footnote in somebody else's book. So it's putting that there so that for the next generation or the next person that researches it, whenever they put in Black female DJs world or Black women in the music industry world in Google, guess whose name comes up? It's just putting those little links in that are not there yet. And now they are there because they're in your book, Joy. And now they are there because they're in my book. And it's not saying that you're the sole person responsible for doing that thing, but every single link helps. Every single mention helps. And Black artists and creators are really super bad at archiving their work.
Oh, that's a good one.
They're also very bad at promoting their work, actually.
And really bad at promoting
collaborating, getting, sort of missed out.
I don't do that.
Yeah.
I don't do social media. I don't promote myself. Too cool for school in one way, or just don't know the journalists or editors or photographers that can come along and do that thing. But because they don't, then they're invisible.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely true.
So what you've done is made the invisible visible. And that's what I have tried to do, is make the invisible visible and make the history a lot more 360 and a lot more colourful, because history, I'm sorry, has been whitewashed for years.
Decades, centuries. The publisher for the book has, they've got very good press, and Autograph's been doing really good press, and, relationships that have happened a long time ago. So one of the nice things is that it's had a really good reception. So, it's gone from, people completely unknown to being, it's now a book of the month for Photo London. It's a central read for ICP, the International Centre for Photography in New York. It's going to have its own centre page, sort of 4 or 5 pages, spread in Financial Times, and have its own magazine for Photo London. You just think, and a few years ago, nobody would have not even a few years ago, last year, hardly anybody knew any of these people.
Yeah. And isn't
also
that shocking?
How important that work is. That work is. It's just sort of, thank you to all of the people that were involved in that, and especially thank you to all the photographers that agreed and trusted for us to actually do that, because so many of them have been let down and disappointed along the way.
Big time. And that is also the other reason why they don't archive, because they've been let down, they've been promised this, it hasn't happened, or it hasn't happened in the way that they've been told it's going to happen. And I would say also thank you to you for pulling it together, because it needs somebody to pull all those strands together and put it in one place so that people can look at it and go, oh my God, I never thought about this person, that person, because they've not been there. And like you say, a year ago, who cared?
Yeah. Tracy Chapman really just got her props, her flowers after 30 years. And I remember listening to that when I was in the car with my father as a child, and it really changed my life and spoke to me. But then only seeing now that her voice, because she was on a show with someone else, is now being highlighted. So I think it's such important work to,
do people not see there's a pattern? Tracy Chapman, Joan Armour Trading, Mallory Blackman, Bernadine Evaristo. We can all talk about these things, and it's like, I've been doing my work for 40, 30, 20, flipping, however many years, and I'm only getting my flowers now. Yeah. Why does that happen? Yeah. Why does that happen when people who are working in the same discipline or medium that are maybe white, it takes them 10 years and they get a lot more sunshine?
It's true. So, I mean,
there's a pattern.
There is a pattern. And, it goes back to my question of, how do you keep the faith in your creative process? And also, would you have any tips to anyone that's listening about, how to put yourself out there? How do you say, do you know what, I'm going to contact all the PR agencies? Because I've experienced this, like that little edge of fear where you're like, I've tried this before and it hasn't happened. Yeah. You know what, I put this in front of someone before and they've rejected it, I mean, for me, like I said, I have this overwhelming urge to bring people together. I love matchmaking, and I want people to feel understood and to feel like they belong, because I think for me personally, I'd always felt a bit othered, like we said at the beginning. So that's my purpose. That's what keeps me going. I love learning. But yeah, what advice would you give to people out there on how to keep the faith and what to do?
Joy.
Oh, how to keep faith. I think to be really focused on what you're doing and believe in yourself, but also I think to surround yourself with people that feel positively about what you're doing and what you're, and who you are, and support you in doing that. Also able to give you some, like critical feedback if it's needed. I think, and to be people who give you confidence and self-belief. Just surround yourself with those people, because anything else is a waste of time. I'm sorry to say that, because, because you can't keep going because you're already sort of like thinking, maybe I'm not worthy. Yeah, so it's really, really important for those sounding boards to be actually saying, it's great. But I have that all the time. Like, I've just finished this piece of work and I was like so terrified of showing it to the commissioner, thinking, oh my God, they're going to think it's really terrible. And they loved it. And I was like, oh, I'm really surprised. But I showed it to another friend of mine. They're going, yeah, man, it's fantastic. But you're like, oh, I'm not sure. So I think to be aware that, you're not necessarily the person you recognize as your best work.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I totally double down on everything you've said there, Joy. It's first and foremost, your belief in yourself and what you're doing is the absolute key. It is the thing that will anchor you through every storm. It has to. If you don't believe in what you're doing, you're going to lose the thread really, really quickly. If it's not something that you physically want to do and believe in, you can do it for a few years. You can be what somebody else wants you to be for a few years. And believe me, I've been there, but it will not last. It won't last. You'll wake up one morning, you won't know who you are. You won't know who you are in that discussion or that discourse or dialogue. It's like, it's not part of you. So you've got to really follow that thing that you are, that you want to do, that you want to create, that you want to make. So whether it's music, art, photography, writing, whatever, it has to be a part of you. It really does have to be a part of you. And then meet people. Really surround yourself with like-minded people, because you can be around people that are a bit the same as you, but they won't necessarily support you in the way you need to be supported, and you can't support them in the way that, it needs to be a two-way too. You can't just take, and you can't be around people who are just takers of your ideas or your energy or whatever, your creation. It has to be a two-way. You can exchange, you can collaborate. Definitely. You can be in a community of like-minded people and it's great and you can share. But you have to be aware of being around people who are taking and not giving back.
That's so interesting. That trust.
because there's a very fine difference between that. And you have to, again, I'm speaking from my own experience, but I had to be able to identify the difference. I had to be able to see the difference of being around lots of people who I'm working with and we're all the same and we're all doing this, and then being around lots of people that I'm working with and we're all doing the same, we're all doing this, but we're supporting what each other is doing. We're not just taking, or they're not just taking from me and getting what they can get, because we are in this sharing group. And hey, it's just a very fine difference. And critical, like having somebody that can give you, I just totally double down on everything you said there, Joy. I really do. I think
I completely agree with all that. And I also think the other thing is you don't have to be all doing the same thing. So I find a lot of sustenance come from people working in completely different mediums or completely different industries, like scientists, musicians, like everybody. And you just said, like, everybody throws something into the pot and you throw something back. And also I find teaching has been such a great sustainer of not just my practice, but just of my life. Sort of like, the people who've helped me out most have usually been students of mine. It's like saying, oh, can we do this for you? Or, like you're talking about their ideas in a tutorial and they spark something off, having some fiery conversation about something you disagree. And it's like really so fantastic. And for me, also working across generations like that,
yes.
Working across many generations, you learn so much from everyone. And I think that thing about constantly learning, that young head of constantly curious is the thing that really keeps you going.
Big time. And that really is the mother lode, is that we are getting information and exchange of information and ideas from everywhere. You can learn from everyone. I will get, and I remember being given a piece of advice by one of my nieces, and she was 14 at the time. And it was just like gold. It was like this prophecy of, it's like, where did that come from? But what she'd actually said was just, it was like an arrow, like bullseye. When you just get that piece of information that is just more valuable than anything you've heard from anyone the same as you, and it came from the mouth of a child. So never ever think that the advice that you get from somebody younger than you and somebody twice your age cannot be relevant and valid, because the information comes from absolutely everywhere. And I also learn a lot from, I know you've been having a bit of a problem with the dog there, but I watch dogs as well.
Do you?
Yeah, I do, because I think you can learn a lot about life from watching how they behave in certain situations, how they handle doing the same thing every day. And they're always excited to do the same things, that repetition, that joy in repetition, finding joy in, just the meeting of people and things like that. I know it sounds a bit like cray, but I think you can learn something from absolutely everybody and everything, and never ever feel like you're bigger than somebody.
Yeah,
very wise advice.
That.
Exactly. Stay humble. I mean, we're talking about cross-pollination and what has made an impact on you. So maybe we can share like a film or a piece of art or a music video or something that people could read that has made an impact on you personally.
Robin DiAngelo's book, White Fragility, changed everything for me, but because it's a white woman talking about white fragility, and it gave me a vocabulary for what has been happening for me and around me, for my sisters, my friends and whatever, that I didn't actually have a scientific vocabulary for, but it made me feel less crazy about saying that happened, and this is what it is. It made me feel less like I had to prove this, because there is your proof.
Yes.
It was just, and I love this book, and I've reread it, and yes.
I have it on my shelf, so it's next on my list, because actually education and educating ourselves in this language is so important, because knowledge is power. And I often feel, like you said, that I haven't always had the vocabulary sometimes, and I feel defensive or like people are validating it, or not validating it. But actually, if you have the knowledge to share, it's continuous learning for everyone. So thanks for sharing. Yeah.
Joy?
Yeah, no. Yeah, no, because I read that book, had it on headphones because I do audio books. White Fragility, and it was really great to hear that. And yes, you're absolutely right. It does give you the language. I was thinking about a film that I saw that actually had a big impact on me. So it wasn't actually the film itself. It was actually the music from the film. And it's a really, really old film from a really, really, really long time ago. So it was just after I'd graduated. In fact, I don't think I'd graduated. I think I was still at the Royal College. And I went to see something called Hannah and Her Sisters. Like, so the film,
I love that film.
The film, I thought, like that, it was really great the way it portrayed relationships. But the thing that really touched me was, it was the first time I really connected with Bart. And for me, that's like a real, I don't know, it's just sort of like, it does something that actually completely changes my mood. It makes me go to another place. And it's like magic. And I was somebody who really I didn't know anything about classical music. I really didn't even hear classical music. It was something that happened for people that were, lived up in the hills somewhere.
Yeah.
And for me, it's like one of the most beautiful pieces of music that was ever written.
Yeah.
I love it.
Amazing. Yeah, because I was like, let's get into it. I mean, what music really, makes an impact on your life or, brings up emotions and transforms
yeah, definitely.
you? Yeah,
classical music, absolutely. But I was brought up to play the violin and the piano, so I was.
Me too.
And I played first violin for years. Me and my twin played first violin for years. So lots and lots and lots of classical composers for me, but I do like a bit of Chopin piano stuff. And there's a really strong, powerful track called "Death and the Maiden," which is more violins. But yeah, so classical, and then jazz for me, like Miles Davis, a kind of blue. It's just like. You say music can make you cry, and that for me is also, there's a track called Truth, just makes me cry every time. By the time the voices come in, you've got this swell of voices, instruments, it's jazz. But it just rearranges every single molecule. So gorgeous, yeah.
I can't wait, to listen to these things.
Kamasi Washington.
Okay, Kamasi Washington. Okay, yes.
So sorry, Joey, I interrupted you.
No, it's fine. I'm too frightened to touch the computer. So I think about, one of the, just in case it all blows up or whatever, is like, so there's one music that actually makes me think about my parents and home and growing up. It's Fats Domino and I Want to Walk With You. All those blue beat sounds, because my house is just full of music the whole time, which is why I don't think of it as being something that's there. It's sort of like I will listen to anything.
Oh, Fats, man. I need to do some investigation. I need to hear that song. I do. Come on,
we are going to sing it. We are going to get the singing.
No. We are going to get you singing, Joy. We're definitely going to get you singing. Oh, the film was Judas and the Black Messiah.
Ah, okay. I'm going to watch it.
That.
Yeah.
It's really good.
Okay.
It's really, really good.
Amazing. Well, I'm
Selma.
Selma. Okay. We've got some things to watch. I love this conversation. And I would also love people to walk away with your top tips about music or something that's made a difference in your life that other people might benefit from. You get 3 each if you want to. What are your top tips for being creative?
So my number one, and it's a funny one because it's changed, and I've come back to it because I've lived away from home for a number of years and I've been through various relationships, whatever the dynamic has been with my family. But I swear on my life that if it wasn't for my family, I could not have done what I've done. And my family has been the absolute, strength, and not necessarily in them having had that much to do with directly with what I'm doing, but just the being there and the having my back and knowing that I don't have to be any which way with them other than myself, and having that place to go where you can just be like me.
Yes.
Has just been, it's my number one savior, really. My family, my friends, and I keep a very tight circle of friends for this reason, that when I'm with those people, that I know I can just absolutely be myself.
Yes.
And I think that's important to know. I know some people don't really get on with their families, and trust me, I did not for a lot of years. I've had difficulties, so I understand that. And I'm also like various of my nephews and nieces who've moved away and are having those problems with their families. And I'm like, it's fine. Go through that. That is part of the flow. It will come back. And you will learn and you will realize the importance of this network of people, because, and I know people say it all the time, and it does really depend on your relationship with your family, but your family are really there all the time.
And they know you, right? So it's very comforting to hear as a child of a very big family with older sisters and a younger brother.
I understand it's a plus and a minus because your family are always there. So if you don't get on with them, it's just it's a stress. But I am very lucky in that my family are so dope.
Amazing.
And we've all got our problems and we've all got our illnesses and we've all got our whatevers, challenges or whatever. But I absolutely love every single member of my family. So yeah, that. And the dogs.
And the dogs, exactly. The dog watching. And the dogs. Keep them close.
They're never going to recover.
Keep them really close. Yeah. You can feel their fur tickling your ankles, Joy.
Joy.
Yeah, that.
What's your top tip, Joy? Keep the dogs close.
Well, I think I'm with Paulette here, absolutely, with family and friends. And I think as I've become older, it's become more and more important. And that whole idea of sort of like, and it doesn't matter where your friends are in the world, it's sort of like just that's so important. And my family is like incredibly important to me. And it's been really funny because they've never shown an inkling of interest in my work. Really, they might come to something under duress, but and they will come if they think you're going to be there on their own, they'll turn up. But what really changed for me was I've just done, well, not just done, it came out in December. I did the map and the poster for the London Underground, for Art on the Underground. So it's the leaflets on the top. Suddenly I'm like an artist. It's like, oh, that's what you do. And then they all wanted a poster. So that was really, to my
that's sick.
That my niece, who's like, she's quite feisty, turned up at Bond Street from Southend and demanded that the guy in the ticket office give her a poster because my auntie made that.
Did he give her the poster?
It wasn't him. No, we didn't have one.
What a shame.
They sent her one. They sent her one in the end, so she's very happy.
That's good.
We love that. We absolutely love that.
Paulette, is that what your family's like with your gigs? Do they come? Do they come?
Well, yeah, really. And they've only really started coming to. I mean, it's interesting that you said that they didn't show a slightest bit of interest. Yes.
Yes. I'm also nodding.
For years, it didn't matter that, what I did. But then I came back home and they've been really supportive of everything from me starting again in the little bars to working my way up to, whatever headline and asking me for guest lists for this gig, that gig, that festival. But I always find it really amusing when my nephews and nieces are there and they'll be in the green room and they'll go, Auntie Paulette. And I'm like, yeah. Yeah, no, I think it's really sweet them calling me Auntie Paulette in front of absolutely everybody. It's like, crack on.
I mean, that's a good question to go back to what you said about family and keeping them close. How do you keep your creative side and your career side separate? Like, obviously it's important to you, but it might not be as important to them, without getting offended that someone hasn't supported you. I mean, how do you manage that?
It's just,
that's nothing to do with it.
Yeah, they're interested and fine, but if they're not, it doesn't matter,
That's
it
true.
Really doesn't matter.
That's true.
It's just not their thing. They're all very, they're either in politics or they're in, whatever they're doing is not my, it's just not their vibe necessarily. But when it is, they come and they support. Yeah. They're involved when they're involved, and when they're not, it doesn't matter.
Yeah. Is there any other burning top tips that you think people should have in or think about in their creative process? We talked about success.
Curious.
Yeah.
Keep learning. Ask questions. Always ask questions of everybody, and don't be afraid to ask for help.
Boom.
100%. 100%.
That's
Absolutely.
it. Mic drop.
And I've had to learn that. I didn't, asking for help is one of the hardest things to do, because it's like I'm now showing I'm vulnerable. I'm now saying that I don't necessarily understand it, or I can't do it on my own. But that's fine. It's fine. That's how we learn. That's how we get better. And also, if you don't say, and if you don't ask, people haven't got a crystal ball. They don't know you're struggling. They don't know you don't understand. They don't know where you are until you open your mouth and say that thing. And then when you say it, they're like, oh my God, I didn't know that. It helps other people when you open your mouth and ask for help, because then they can gauge where you are. They can gauge what you need and what you can give to them in the exchange. So that opening your mouth has been a massive learning curve for me. I didn't used to do it at all. And the difference it's made for me is enormous, absolutely enormous. And I would recommend that. Open your mouth and ask for help.
Amazing.
Fantastic. Yeah. Great.
Fantastic.
That's brilliant.
Joy, anything to add before we go?
I don't know, because I was thinking about people that have been really, really important in my life. And there have been a couple of really important teachers and mentors. And I would say like my art teacher at school, Mrs. Morgan, was
you remember
incredible
the names.
in making me actually believe in myself and have faith. And what was really wonderful, so this is many years after I'd left school, is when I graduated from Royal College, she actually turned up for my degree show, which is fantastic. And then also when I was learning how to teach, which doesn't really happen very much now, I think, for many people, is I had this brilliant mentor who we used to team teach, and he'd been teaching for a number of years. And I think he made me into a really good teacher, being able to listen, just listen, echo back, encourage, and let him, my thing for what's really important is I think for me, teaching is about getting people to believe in themselves, to say, this might not be the right thing for you. Continue with it. But, at the end of the day, you do what you want to do, and no one can go back at you for that. So that's all I can say about teaching and that's what my mentor, Mike Berry, taught me.
Brilliant. I swear, if there was a click track for this interview, all you'd have heard was click. Because when you said, Joy, listen, it's a massive piece of advice, and we don't do it enough. We're all talking 10 to the dozen, talking over, talking under. Take the time to listen, to listen, to learn to listen, because that's when you hear the good stuff.
It's really important, and active listening, not just listening to reply or listening to get your story across. I mean,
listening to wait for that moment when you can jump in, skipping. It's you're not actually even listening, really. You're just waiting for your cue. There's a big difference between listening and waiting for your cue.
Exactly. And I've loved listening to both of you today.
Just been listening to you, Joy, and the wisdom coming out. And I knew there was that glow. I said your glow is shining, and it has, and you have shone the light, and oh my God, this has been such a wonderful session. Thank you so much, Maxine, for inviting me. Thank you, Joy, for sharing your wisdom, both of you, for sharing your wisdom and your time. been amazing.
Paulette, for sharing your wisdom. And
I know.
It's been
About
amazing.
dogs.
Yeah, I've learned so much about everything. It's just like amazing. 100%. Brilliant.
I want to thank you so much again, and I hope that maybe next time we can do it in person and we can all be in the same room. What a pleasure and joy to speak to you both. And remember, if you understand yourself, you understand the world.